All right. It's that time. It's time for Beyond Sight and Sound. Let's do this.
Are you looking for a high-quality beach and sand scoop? Are you trying to take your hunting to the extreme? How about an American-based company that stands behind their product and everything they sell? Then check out our friends over at XTREME Scoops. John has been making scoops for some time now and makes a quality beach and sand scoop to take your hunting to the next level. XTREME Scoops recently released their new sand shredder that works great in the water and on the beach. And if you're a new Equinox user, you may want to check out his Surfmaster X3 that can trap those small targets you new Equinox users are finding out there. XTREME Scoops' company approach is let's do it right. So do it right, buy it once, and go to the extreme. XTREMEScoops.com. That's XTREME scoops.com. Caution. Please do not operate motor vehicles or power equipment while under the influence of this show. Listening to this show could cause side effects such as bouts of laughter, violent binges of cabin fever, and even dreams of silver and gold. Please be advised. Now that the fine print is out of the way, on with the show. All right, the fine print's out of the way, and it's time to roll with the show. We're back, and we're live once again. You are listening to Beyond Sight and Sound, metal detecting and treasure hunting radio for all the really cool digging people out there. And when I look into the chat, I see Dave D., the man himself, in the house. Earl's in, Chuck Smalley, the man with the plan, Robert, Mike, the Bills, Suki, let's see here. Forget that. The chat's already flying. It's looking like a ticker tape over here on my side. I can't even keep track of all the names already. So, I guess we'll just say, hey, welcome aboard to everyone, because, exciting things, not necessarily so much metal detecting tonight, but still treasure hunting related, still in that, arena of the grand encompassing term of treasure hunting. Definitely an interesting show we have in store. So links in the description, obviously. First and foremost, our friends over at Shooters and Prospectors, Chuck Smalley, the man with the plan, the dealer of choice. The dealer we like to plug here on the show. And then we have our friends at XTREME Scoops, our friends at DETECTEES.com. Ken and Mark, Darth, Buddy, doing a great job with the Beyond Sight and Sound apparel. You'll see Mark in the house. And then our friends over at XP Team USA, obviously, Team Captain Dave D., the man himself, in the house tonight. We've got the links for their podcast every other Friday, the website, the blog articles, the Facebook group, and all of those very important links that you can find them at. You will be able to find the link for their YouTube channel on their website, in their Facebook group, and through their podcast as well. As I said, every other Friday, right here on Spreaker. Great job. Their last episode, they kind of recapped the Detecting the Heartland hunt and had some in-field interviews. Very, very cool to see here, however you want to put it. Very, very cool to hear those people on to discuss what was going on with Detecting the Heartland, and also very cool to hear a little clip there from Chuck. Very kind words from Chuck, and thank you for the shout out there, Chuck. So obviously, other than that, we've got a lot of links in the description tonight, folks. Beyond those links, we also have the link for Nicola White, Mudlark Tideline Art on YouTube, the link for Tideline Art on Facebook, the link for Tideline Art on Twitter and Instagram, and the Tideline Art website. And I hope I got all of those links and did not forget one. I will go back and double check the description after the show. And if it's not there, I will put it there. But as we shared the promo today, we did make sure to share the link to Nicola's YouTube channel and advised people then, if you go to the About Me section of the channel, you will find all the links that you need. All the answers are right there. The website, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, it's one-stop shopping, basically. Oh, that's the other thing. The link for the Tideline Art Etsy store is in the description tonight, too. I knew I was forgetting something somewhere. So that's in there as well, and you can also find that over on her YouTube channel. Very, very active YouTube channel. As I see, actually, there's a little bit of a kind of a benchmark or a milestone there, so to speak. I see you broke 38,000 subscribers today, so
Yay.
Congratulations on that. So let's, I guess first off, we do want to say thank you, Nicola, for taking the time to actually do this live because of the time zone difference. You're a real trooper, so kudos to you. So let's get you in here and introduce everybody. How is it going? Our guest tonight is Nicola White, Mudlark from Tideline Art on YouTube. Obviously, you're into mudlarking, so welcome aboard. Thanks for taking the time to be on tonight.
My great pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me, Josh. It's great. I'm sitting here eating chocolate to stay awake. It's great fun.
Well, hey, that's we all have to do what it takes to get us by, I guess. And wow, there could be some late night cleaning of artifacts or something after the show for you.
Yeah, there could be actually. Yeah, I might go and clean up my studio. It's a little bit disorganized in there with all my recent mudlarking finds.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And speaking of which, those who caught your recent video, because you did upload a video today, there's a shot there of the studio with your mudlarking finds that I'm under the impression, unless you do some heavy research really, really fast, that video wasn't taken today.
Oh no, I finished making it today, but that video was made up of a few different mudlarking outings over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I kind of picked a few finds that went well together and then patched them together. So that's what I did. Yeah, it's the video where I found these very, very strange teeth. I mean, it's not just old historical artifacts that we can find along the River Thames. You can find all sorts of things. That's the beauty of it, really. You just never know what the tide is going to leave out for you.
Right.
So it's like going on a treasure hunt. It's that, I guess it's the same for you in metal detecting. It's that sense of anticipation. You just don't know what you're going to find. It's that what keeps you going back day after day.
Exactly. Yeah. We can't wait to, when we unearth something, we're like, oh, wow, that's so neat. Well, hopefully. And, then we're like, wow, that's very cool. Now it's on to the next one. Can't wait to see what I can find next, and then do the research about it. And it's always just that anticipation of what that next target could be, because you never know what's going to come up next, especially with the mudlarking as well. It could be something extremely old, or it could be something recently dropped.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the River Thames, you tend to find things along the River Thames according to what went on along that part of the river. I mean, where I go, there was a lot of military activity there. There was the Royal Arsenal there. You know, also King Henry VIII's ships were built along that part of the river. So there's a lot of Tudor history there as well.
Right.
So, you know, you can... And then further up the river, closer to the centre of town, there was Londinium, you know, where the Romans were. So you're going to get a lot of older history up there. So it's very, very interesting. Very interesting. There's a lot of industry went on along southeast London where I go as well. So, you know, that's why I find a lot of clay pipes there, a lot of articles that were dropped by people that used to work along the river.
Right. And you do certainly, anybody watching your videos, you find a number of clay pipes, but each one seems to be so unique and interesting.
They are. I'm fascinated with clay pipes. I just love them. I mean, you know, they were introduced to England from about 1580. And then they, I guess people stopped using them the early 20th century. So we've got like a whole range of pipes, you know, from the last sort of, let's say, 500 years or so. And they're all so different, you know, and you can tell the age from the shape of the bowl and where the signature is. And really, it's a really fascinating subject. It's a very personal sort of part of history, I suppose, because all these pipes, you know, people have had them in their mouths, you know, and you pick them up, and often you're the next person to have touched it after the person who lost it or threw it away. So it's quite interesting.
Exactly. We do the same with the metal detecting. A lot of times, some of us are very interested in the more personal items, say a button or a thimble, or even a ring or something like that, where you wonder, when you pick up that item, you're the first person to touch that, since the last person perhaps misfortunately lost it. And you have to wonder, wow, you know, the stories that this item could tell. You're the first one to bring that piece of the past back to the daylight, so that story can continue. Because in many times, no matter what the find is, or what we're looking for or hoping to find, it's still all pieces of history.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like being handed something down from the past directly from the person who lost it. It's a real thrill. And I mean, especially with clay pipes, you sometimes get the maker's mark on the side of the pipe. And, you know, then you can research the clay pipe maker and find out about their family. And, you know, to a certain extent, it just brings that person back to life again. So it's those personal items that are very special to find.
Right. And in your video, you even shared some links on how people can find information on those pipes. Well, I guess before we get into that, let's back up for a minute. And for people who may not realize, why don't you go ahead and explain to them in your words, or you know, how you would explain it to somebody, just exactly what is mudlarking and what inspired you to get involved in it? When did you get involved in it?
Okay. Well, first of all, let's start off with the term mudlark, and this dates back to pre-Victorian times. And mudlarks were often young children or old women. They used to come down to the mud of the Thames at low tide and come out. They were very, very poor. They were the poorest of the poor, with no money at all. They used to go out at low tide into the mud and try and find whatever they could to sell to make a few pennies to buy some food and take back to their families. So they used to sell bits of coal, even bits of rope or metal, anything that might have fallen off of boats. And I mean, and some of the richer people used to have a lot of fun throwing in pennies into the mud and then watching these poor kids, fighting over these pennies. So they were called mudlarks, and they often used to be recognized because they would wander around with their clothes thick with mud, and in the sun, their clothes would get hard with mud. So they had a pretty miserable existence. But now, so a modern day mudlark, we go down at low tide. Luckily, we do have Wellington boots. We don't have to go down with our bare feet. And we have apps with tide apps to tell us where, what the tide is doing. And we're looking for pieces of history from the past, what people have dropped or lost. Of course, we're looking for little pieces of treasure, but we're also looking for the history. And obviously, we don't need to sell it to survive. But so that's what mudlarking is. We go down at low tide to search for what the tide has thrown out, and every tide is different. You just don't know what it's going to leave out. And with all the civilizations that have lived along the banks of the River Thames since London began, there's such a very big wealth of artifacts to be found, dating right back to, to be honest, to Neolithic times and prehistoric times. We find fossils. Then we've got the Celtic finds, Roman finds, Victorian, Georgian. We've just got a huge selection. And the Thames has always been used as a rubbish bin as well. So with all the things that have been thrown in there, it's like one big lucky dip.
Right, and I imagine that, you were mentioning the tides and using the tidal apps. Many times when I'm doing the coastal beach and water hunting, that's what we use as well. And like you said, not all tides are good. Sometimes I imagine, even in your environment, do you find that sometimes some tides will actually uncover things, but at other times it can actually bury them?
There are certain tides every month which are really low. These are the ones you want to get. And obviously summertime is better because then we have the choice of two tides. You can go in the morning, you can go in the evening, and an afternoon low tide, in my opinion, is the best because you've had the whole day. The boats have been going up and down the river. They've been washing all the mud off. And so you've got a nice clean foreshore and you can see what you're looking at. Whereas if you go down in the morning, and the boats haven't been active during the night, it just leaves a big thick sort of covering of silt, so you can't see what you're looking at. But with the we have these clipper boats in London, these passenger boats, and they go at quite a speed, and so they're causing quite a bit of erosion, which isn't good in a way. But when you're looking for bits of history, they're quite good because they are washing out a lot of bits and pieces that have been probably in the middle of the river for quite some time. So that's a bit of a plus for us in a way. And you were asking how I got into mudlarking. I grew up in Cornwall, right down in the southwest of England. So I used to do a lot of beach combing, and I particularly loved that. But when I moved to London, I loved it. So when I moved to London in about 1998, I found myself down on the beach of the Thames, and I noticed a few bits of pottery, a few bits of clay pipe, and started to collect those. And then I found my first coin, and that was so exciting. And there was no way back then. I just I really became completely gripped with it, and then went down every time I could.
Do you remember what your first coin was?
I think it was. It wasn't particularly old. I mean, really, it was a King George coin. I think from the late 19th. No, that would have been Victorian. Early 20th century. It wasn't terribly old, but it was something so exciting about finding an old coin. I remember screaming with delight.
Right, sometimes it doesn't matter if it's necessarily extremely old. You're still hooked.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You think, wow, it was just a great experience. And then I started searching more seriously by eye. I mean, I very rarely use a detector, and I just started to find all sorts of bits and pieces. Just these little bits of social history that people have lost or dropped, little pieces of jewelry, medals. I mean, I find a lot of military artifacts, a lot of military buttons, a lot of bullets, medals, these sort of everyday items that once would have meant a lot to that person or would have been very, very useful. So, again, it's the stories behind these finds which really fascinate me.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Many times the story behind the find, or just knowing the history behind it, the history of the item that you've recovered, a lot of times has more meaning to me than actually finding the find itself.
Yeah, completely. I mean, one of my favorite finds is this little brass luggage tag that I found with the name of a soldier on it and his address. I mean, at the time I didn't know it was a soldier, but it had his name and address on it. And when I looked him up on Ancestry, I found his whole history. He'd been to Australia, he fought in World War One, he came back to London and married his landlady, and there were all his war records online. And then I found his grave, and all that because of a little piece of metal with his name and an address. And what was lovely was that he didn't have any children himself, so he didn't have anybody really to sort of tell his story. So it was really like opening up a storybook and bringing him back to life again. And that was just a really special experience. And I mean, sometimes I do feel that things are just meant to be found, because I think stories have to be told.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree with that. Which kind of brings up another question, I guess. I was going another direction, but with the message, with the mention of the baggage tag, that does kind of bring up a point of, have you ever recovered an item like that and felt like maybe if you could find one of their descendants that it would be nice for them to have, or if you ever had the opportunity to find and return an item?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, if something really resonates with someone and it would be linked to them, or something was important to them, and occasionally people have written to me and said, "Oh gosh, that my mother used to be in that sort of army regiment or something, or I really love that button." I mean, I will sometimes give things to people, and yes, of course, if it was something that was linked to a family and I found them, I would absolutely give it back to them. In fact, the funny thing about that is that I was contacted probably a year after I found that tag by a family in the States who is like a distant cousin of Fred Jury. That was his name, this World War I soldier. And so that was really interesting. And she sent me some photographs. Obviously it was quite a distant relative. And so now that's been added to the story as well.
Now that's cool.
Yeah.
Very
I
cool.
can't remember where in America they are, but they contacted me. And so that was really, really wonderful. They were searching online, trying to find information about their relative, and when they Googled the name, they came across my blog that I wrote about this man, and so they contacted me through that.
Oh, nice, very nice. I didn't include a link for the blog.
I'll send you that. I can send it to you.
Yeah,
it's on my website actually. It's on the blog, and it's one of the stories on there, but I can send you a link.
Okay, so that's on the Tideline Art website?
Yeah, it is. It's
okay.
On the blog part. It's on the blog part.
Okay, so people can find those then with the link we've got in the description then. Very cool. So we know that some areas along the Thames, I guess, like there's certain things that you can do in certain areas. Like some people mudlark with metal detectors. They use that to assist them. Some use some areas you can do just scraping, while other areas you may be able to do a little bit of, I guess, a limited amount of digging, we'd say, and other areas you truly are restricted to just eyes only. So if somebody was interested in, saying, traveling abroad to try mudlarking on the Thames, what can they be expecting in store for them as far as permits or what they should do?
Okay, so if you decide that you want to go to London to have a go at mudlarking, I guess the first thing you need to do is look into getting a permit, and the permits are issued by the Port of London Authority, and all the details are on their website. It's a bit awkward, really, because if you can get day permits, but they're just a little bit cheaper than a permit for 3 years. A 3-year permit for a standard mudlark permit is £80. I guess that's got to be about $120 or so, probably about $130, and that's for 3 years. I mean, it's very
sound
good.
Bad.
No, it's not bad at all, and that gives you the right to scrape down 7.5 centimetres in certain parts of the Thames. And the Port of London Authority, they give you a map, which marks out clearly where you're allowed to go. There are some places it's mostly on the north side where you can't scrape. You really just have to look by eye. Because, there's areas which are quite protected. There's a lot more erosion there, so they don't want people digging around and scraping on those areas. On the south side, you're allowed to scrape, and there are certain areas you can't do anything at all. So they give you a map, and they do explain all the places that you can go. There is the Society of Mudlarks, and there's only 52 of them, and it takes quite a long time to actually get into that society. And they have the right to, or they are allowed to dig down, I think, 1.5 meters.
Wow.
And they also have access to different parts of the foreshore that we do not have access to. But to be honest with you, I know quite a few of them, and they don't usually dig down 1.5 meters, because apart from anything else, I mean, I find even just scraping down 7.5 centimeters in that mud, you kind of get that, you can't really see what you're looking at. The mud is particularly gloopy and thick.
Well, and I imagine being right there on the foreshore like that, it doesn't take much of a hole at all, and you're probably having trouble seeing whatever you're looking for anyway, because it's filling back in with water and mud.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, you can, with the standard permit, you can metal detect with that. You don't need a separate permit. I mean, if I wanted to go down there with a metal detector, I could. It's just that, for me, I always find that I find so many things by eye that I just haven't felt the need to go with the detector. But I do have friends that detect, and for sure they do find some really lovely little bits and pieces. And I'm sure that if I went down there and did it a few times and started to find some really interesting artifacts, I'd probably want to do it more. But for the time being, I'm pretty happy just searching by eye. I also feel sometimes that things are found when they're meant to be found, and I just don't really like to force that sort of process. And so that's why I don't metal detect. But, I've got plenty of friends who do. And like I said, they find some really interesting bits and pieces that I would never find by eye. But, I've found so many things by eye that...
Well, and realistically, I guess, with all of the years of history, occupation, activity, there's got to be quite a debris field that you'd be using a metal detector in. It'd be very hard to isolate signals, I would think.
Yeah, there's so much metal down on the foreshore. I mean, there's so much of it, just old scrap metal everywhere, that you would need a really good discrimination, to find metal that you're looking for.
Right.
And I suppose on a really low tide in certain parts of the foreshore where there's not too much debris, but where I go, there's so much old scrappy metal that it would be really hard
Right. With those that use metal detectors, have you noticed maybe a particular manufacturer or model that tends to show up more often than others down there?
Well, I'm not an expert at metal detectors, but there's one called a gold bug. Does that make
okay.
Have you heard of?
Mm-hmm.
And I think people do use those XP juices ones. But you know what? I'm not a big metal detector expert, so I'm not too sure of the names. I mean, they use the ones with the small little bits at the end.
Right, yeah. I guess that wouldn't surprise me either, that there would be some of the XP Deus users down there. It's a very versatile machine.
Mm.
It is definitely that. So, with the finds that you have made, well, I guess first off, let's back up again. You've also, another interesting aspect of your videos that I've noticed is that you also find a number of messages in bottles.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I found nearly 100. I found over 130 messages in bottles now. So that's pretty exciting. It's always very exciting finding a message in a bottle. I mean, I think the thing to remember, but the beauty of the River Thames, and I suppose anywhere really, is that it doesn't just have ancient history. I mean, there was an MP in the 19th century who said the Thames is liquid history, and it really is, and I think it's like a liquid storybook, and it has old stories and new stories. And of course, a lot of these new stories are in the form of messages in bottles. So the messages I found, none of them are older than 15 years old, but they're all interesting, and it's a really, really interesting way to connect with people. And I've met quite a few of the people that I've found their messages, and some of them are really funny. I mean, I think one of my favorites has always been one that I found that was written by a child, and it said, "I wish I could be a Dino Thunder Power Ranger, the Red Ranger," from Jack Hodges. And I use social media a lot to engage people with my finds, and I put this out on Twitter, and I said, "Can anybody help me make Jack's dream come true?" And miraculously, we traced Jack Hodges. And so I bought him a Power Ranger outfit, the red one, and sent it to him. And I contacted his family and said, "Hey, we found the message in a bottle. We'd like to send you this Power Ranger outfit." And so we did. And then he sent back a photograph of himself wearing the Power Ranger outfit. So it was great. It's like you throw a wish into the river and you get your wish coming back to you.
Yeah, very, very cool. And I'm sure that had to have made his day a bit as well.
Absolutely. He's probably throwing in messages asking for Xboxes now, but but I haven't found that one.
Right, you just never know with some people, I guess. But and especially with the story of Jack like that, his message was legible and you could see it, but not all messages come through quite as clear, I guess I should say.
Very frustrating when if anybody out there is about to send a message in a bottle, firstly, put it in a glass bottle, but secondly, write it in pencil, because pencil doesn't fade. People write it in pen, and then if it sits on the banks of the river, with the sun beating down on it, there's nothing more frustrating for a message in a bottle hunter than when you open it up and the pen has just faded and you just can't read it. And that's happened on a number of occasions. It's always a bit disappointing.
Right, but I imagine from what I've seen, let's see, what was it? I believe the BBC did a spot on your messages in the bottle a while back, and it looked like you had quite a number of bottles.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I tend to go to places. Well, I go to the Thames estuary as well as the Thames. And the Thames estuary is a little further out on the way to the sea, but it collects a lot of debris and rubbish. And amongst that, there's a lot of bottles, and most of them are plastic. But, so it is an ideal place to search for messages in bottles, because there's always going to be one amongst, a couple hundred, I'd say.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And I guess it's also a good point to mention, too, that when you're down there looking for whatever treasures may come to light, you're also doing your fair share to help clean up the environment as well.
Yeah, that's right. I try to collect as much plastic as I can. But what I try and do is just to have a bit of fun with it too. I collect up all the colourful plastic and then make a big kind of little installation on the side of the river, and then take some pictures of it and put it out on Twitter or Facebook or all the other numerous social media platforms I seem to have got myself involved in. It's too many to keep count of now. And then I take it home with me. In fact, I've got a lot of plastic here, and hopefully in August, actually, I'm going to be making a big plastic sculpture for the Totally Thames Festival, which is taking place in London the end of August, beginning of September. So I'm going to make a really large, big plastic cormorant. Do you have cormorants over there? You do, don't you?
Yeah. So this is kind of like, well, I guess for lack of a better term, like upcycling the debris that you're finding, or recycling it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's quite nice to, sometimes it's more striking, I think, when you make a piece of artwork with all the plastic to draw people's attention in and make them aware of how much plastic there is, rather than just preach to people about plastic. I find that it's good to have something visual for people to see, to see how much of it is out there, in our rivers and oceans.
Oh, absolutely. Not to mention, I'm sure that much like with metal detecting, we get enough bad publicity as it is. So anytime you can do something like that to help put things in a good light, it goes a long way for public impression of what you all are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Another thing we get a lot of, in the more modern sense in the Thames are religious offerings too. We get a lot of, because the Thames is considered a holy river by a lot of the religious communities that live along the banks, and it's a replacement Ganges as well for a lot of Hindus, and so we get quite a lot of religious offerings, coconuts and wrapped in red silk, Ganeshas, Shivas, Vishnus, so all sorts of things.
Wow, you really never know what you're going to get. It's like a giant melting pot of things.
It is. I think, but obviously for me, my favourite types of finds are the historical artefacts. Probably one of my most precious finds is my Queen Elizabeth I half a crown, the silver half a crown that was made in 1601, and that was a completely chance find. I'd actually stopped looking, and I was just standing looking out at the river, and I looked down between my boots, and there was something round there between my boots, and I picked it up, and it was this beautiful coin, which it would have been worth a lot in its time, and it's worth quite a lot today. But hopefully I'll never sell it, but very, very special.
Right. Yeah, definitely that would be. So you're finding, not only are you finding the plastic bottles and plastic balls and the buttons and beads and things of that nature, but you're running across a little bit of silver and maybe even gold if they're lucky.
Yeah, I found a bit of gold in my. I found a beautiful gold and sapphire ring. Honestly, that was just absolutely amazing. And I did show it to the museum, and they didn't want to keep it. So I made it smaller, and so now I wear it, and it's stunning. I couldn't have chosen a better ring for myself if I tried. It was great.
Oh, well, that's cool.
And it's even more special, I think, when you actually find it. And I also wear around my neck all the time a pendant, 3 things on chain that I found. There's a Georgian heart, a tiny Victorian heart, and a little silver cross from the 17th century. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. I believe. Yeah, we've got a caller on with us. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Well, if it isn't Stryker, long time no see, my friend.
Yeah, still alive and trying to kick.
Good. At least you're stepping the right direction. So apparently you're enjoying the conversation with Nicola.
Yes, I am. I'd like to ask her a question if I could.
Absolutely. I'm sure she would enjoy that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
Nice to meet you, and thanks for being on the show. So,
My pleasure.
when you find something on the side, I'm not sure, do you still have to, no matter what you find, do you still have to report it and turn it in? Or, because you still can't, especially if it's an artifact, right? Do you still have to report it?
There are guidelines on that. So, and so what it is if you find something that's over 300 years old, or if it's a treasure, or if it's of significant historical importance, then we have to take it along to the Museum of London, to our finds liaison officer. It's through the Portable Antiquities Scheme, and report it to them. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I took along quite a lot of Roman pottery that I'd found, also an old Roman ear scoop. Actually, a lot of it was Roman, a Roman bone pin, and a gaming counter. I did take a couple of other things that I thought that he might have wanted to take, but he didn't want to. But, we do always take them in, and then they say, okay, we'll take that. So he'll register that, and then I'll go back in about 3 months' time, and he'll just give it back to me. They don't usually want to keep it, unless it's something really spectacular.
Right.
And I've never found anything classed as treasure, but, and then there would be more of an issue. They'd probably want to keep it. But, it's really important responsibility to go in and report your finds, for sure.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for the call,
Take care, Josh.
You too, buddy.
You bet.
Wow. It's been a while since we've happened to hear from Stryker. Very nice. He's enjoying the show. Definitely. Which, he did bring up a good question. We did need to cover that, so that's very good.
It is important to, because also the Museum of London want to be able to register the finds and where they were found. So it sort of builds up a picture of what was going on in London and where, and it's nice to sort of keep a record of all of that, because it's all, important parts of London's history, I suppose.
Well, and I imagine too that I believe you had mentioned earlier that a lot of this stuff is actually listed then on a website where you can go back and view it yourself, so that may even help in terms of research when you find a certain item.
It does, yeah, that's right. It's called, it's finds.org.uk, and so everything is given a reference, and so anything that, if you've got a piece of Roman pottery, it might say in the details that they put up on the site, this is very similar to another one, and then you can search all these objects and see if something has been found in a similar place, there's something that might look similar. I mean, I recently found a really nice cross hatchet, sort of bone handled knife, which was engraved with some initials. And as I was researching it, I found another couple that were actually registered on the database. And that was really useful because I wasn't quite sure how old it was. And I got quite a bit of information from that. So I took the knife along to the museum. He didn't want to keep it, but it was still very useful to.
So it does help to kind of help you be able to date the finds as well then. At certain times, anyway. I think we've got another caller on with us. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, my name is Adisa, and I have a question for your guest. And it's a very fascinating conversation. I'd like to know how long has she been mudlarking, and what is the most interesting thing she's ever found about mudlarking.
Oh, okay, sorry. Could you just repeat the question, please?
Oh, my name is Adisa, and I'm from California, and I would like to know how long have you been mudlarking, and I would like to know what is the most interesting thing you have found while mudlarking.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, so I've been mudlarking now for about 15 years, since I came to London. And, well, I've found so many interesting things that it's very hard to choose one in particular. But I already mentioned the wartime luggage tag with Fred Jury's name on. But a recent find I also absolutely loved. I found a little rusty, corroded tag that used to belong to a dog. First of all, I thought that it was a little shopping trolley token, but when I cleaned it at home, I noticed that it had a name on it, and it was a dog's name. He's called Bonzo Tabner, and it had the address. And I looked up the records for this address, and sure enough, a family called Tabner lived there. And this dog belonged to them in World War II. And amazingly, the woman who owned this dog, who was a teenager at the time, she's now about 95, still alive. And I managed to trace her. And that was her dog. And but whilst I was researching Bonzo Tabner, I came across a story of what happened to all these pets during World War II. All these hundreds and thousands, and actually 2.5 million pets that were put down. And so as a result of this find, I've just raised some money now for a memorial to these pets, which is about to be dedicated in August. So it's just another example of another story from the River Thames, really.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. I would just like to ask one question. I'd just like to make a statement before I leave. Is there any type of way that we can subscribe to your website or check out any information and things of that nature on the videos that you be making to keep, to just keep up to date on the things that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is Nicola White Mudlark, and you can subscribe to that, and you will be able to keep up with all my adventures. I post videos every week, at least that's what I try to do, and that would be great. Yeah, please do subscribe. That would be wonderful.
Thank you very much, and keep up the good work, and just a wonderful program. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for calling.
Yes, thanks for the call. Wow. That was a new number on me. I've not seen that number before, but apparently you've got a fan out in California.
Oh, wow.
You just never know where people are watching from, or even listening from, for that matter.
No, that's amazing. Wow, California. How far is that from where you are?
Oh, that's quite a ways. I'm over here in northwestern Ohio, so I'm not too awful far from the Great Lakes, and California's clear on the west coast.
Okay, gosh. Okay.
They're well, let's see here. Yeah, it's probably right around 4:30 in the afternoon or so for them.
Oh, okay.
So
oh, gosh.
Quite a time difference there, especially from there to London.
Yeah, no, fascinating. No, it's interesting talking about my favourite finds. I mean, I guess one of my more exciting finds was my unexploded hand grenade, and that was that caused quite a big bang.
Whoa! I imagine that you had to contact some people there.
Yeah. I mean, again, there are guidelines for that kind of find. When you find any kind of ordnance, especially unexploded ordnance, the first thing you do is call the police, and then they come and check it out. And then if they verify it as unexploded ordnance, they'll call the ordnance squad, and they come along and detonate it. So that was pretty exciting. That was 2 or 3 years ago. I found a hand grenade from World War II, which they blew up. So that was, and I was able to film it, so that was quite exciting.
Wow, definitely not what you would expect to find.
No, but I think with a lot of the erosion that's going on at the moment, these things, a lot more of these things are being thrown out. It's quite common actually to to hear on the news that a bomb from World War One or World War Two has been discovered. So it does seem to happen fairly frequently. But I mean, I do find a huge amount of bullets along the river.
Right.
So and much so that some people have sent me books and things to help me identify them because there's such a variety of them.
Yes, there are, and quite a few other lead items along the way as well, I see.
Oh, yeah? Yes, there are a lot of lead items. Yeah, I've got a big collection of lead fishing weights.
Right. It seems like you must have quite a large studio to house all of these collections, because I see collections of plastic balls and beads and lead and messages in a bottle and little doll heads. And
I know. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just becoming one of these obsessive people. No, I mean, it's just, I don't know. There's just something about them, though. I need a bigger studio, but I'm in the process of turning my place into a little museum. I'm looking forward to when I've completed that.
One piece at a time, literally. But you do, and that's one of the great things I think about your videos, is when you find these items, you try to give the backstory to them, the research that you've done on it, what you've found out about the item, what it was used for, or even how it was used. And I think that's one of the very intriguing things about your videos, is people really love to get that information. They like the fact that you're going that extra mile, I think, to get that information out. And I do believe we have another caller on. Yes, we do. How's it going, Swans?
How you doing, buddy, Josh?
All right.
Well, I got a question for your caller, because I know I find British coins here in New England quite often. I'm curious what she finds that are American over there in her country.
That's a good question.
I have found a few American objects. I have found a few American military buttons. Definitely. I can't exactly tell you which ones, as I can't quite remember, but I found some military buttons. Oh, and I did find an American, I think it was a cat badge. It was U.S. Reserve cat badge. So that was really interesting, because I was wondering how that got there. I mean, it was obviously World War II, so it must have been from a U.S. Army person. And also, what else did I find that was American recently? Yeah, a few coins. I have found some American coins. So, yeah, there's definitely a few American artifacts over here to find. In fact, one of my friends, Simon Bourne, who also has a YouTube channel, Sci-Finds, he just recently found a really interesting coin that dates back to the Mayflower times. It was like a tin token from Virginia, I think. So, yeah, wow. We do have some interesting artifacts over here from America.
So it sounds like a Virginia halfpenny.
Yeah, it could have been something like that. In fact, he's got a YouTube channel called Sci-Finds, and he just did a video about it. But he's found some very interesting he metal detects, so he has found those that are obviously a little bit further under the mud. But that was really interesting. These, one of them was a token from a tobacco plantation, I think, and one of them was something to do with the Mayflower, of course, because we mudlark quite frequently right close to the Mayflower, where the, I guess, which is quite a big part of American history, isn't it? Don't ask me exactly.
Right. The departure point.
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting, because that's where he's found some American history.
Very cool.
So it sounds like your friend has been to Massachusetts.
Oh, I don't know. What, Simon? No, he found these in America, in England.
Oh, okay. I was going to say,
he found these on the Thames foreshore. That's right. Yeah, these are American things that he's found here in London.
He found these from around the departure point of the Mayflower, not the arrival point.
Oh, yeah, the departure point. Yeah.
No doubt, Josh. Wow.
Right. But still, man, the mix of history.
Yeah, it's.
For sure. I mean, just to hear them talk about the fact that what they found that could be related to the start of our country, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's right. I'd highly recommend you watch his videos about that, actually. They're very, very recent. So again, I can send the information to Josh so that because it was just 2 or 3 weeks ago that he put out this video, I think, about these American tokens that he found. And yeah, it is very interesting.
That would be interesting to see. Definitely. Any other questions, Swans?
Nope, I'm good, buddy. I appreciate that. And you've got a great guest on here tonight.
Yes, she is.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the call, buddy. Wow. And it sounds like, too, when you're doing your research, you do you're quite an avid researcher. I picked up on earlier that you're using Ancestry and many other avenues like that. So you must be quite the voracious researcher. You definitely have a thirst for knowledge and information on these items.
I do. It's part of the process, There's something really fascinating about it. I never know what I'm going to learn next. I mean, on my video today, for example, finding this little fragment of plate led me to then find out about Benjamin Franklin and his almanac that he wrote, Poor Richard's Almanac, and then it led me to find out a bit more about Benjamin Franklin and his daily routine, and then then a couple of weeks ago I found this plaque, which was the old phonetic alphabet for the RAF in 1925, and these are things that just you just think, wow, if somebody had told me I was going to find out this a couple of weeks ago, I would have laughed. But it's just all very enriching, having this very, very miscellaneous information. It's but it's the personal things which I love, and that's why I have my Ancestry subscription, because when you can find the information about a person, it's just very special. I mean, I forgot. I found this padlock, last year with a name on it, which turned out to be from a family from the late 19th century who had 12 children, and 2 of those children were sons, and they fought in World War I and World War II. One of them fought in World War II, anyway, because the youngest son, who was called Sidney, he died in World War I when he was just 17 years old. And then I went to find his name on the war memorial in the same churchyard where he was christened, and all that because of a rusty padlock. So, and there's so much you can find out on Ancestry. And it's very moving, I think. You can't help wondering what people are going to find out about you if you drop something in the mud with your name on. I think it just goes to show that all of us have, we leave our legacy. We leave parts of
an
ourselves
imprint.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've actually got the man himself on with us too. How's it going, Chuck?
Real good. Good show, you two, Nicola. That's great stuff. But I have a question. You said, I didn't catch if you did say anything, like a 1-day permit to go. What does that cost, and how involved is that getting that? I'm going to be over in England in the fall again, and I've heard about the mudlarking and seen some videos. I haven't seen yours. I'm going to look it up and get on your site. But if you get a chance to go, which I may have a chance, what's that cost?
Okay, so a daily permit costs around about £35, I think, which is only really half the cost of a 3-year permit, so it doesn't really make that much sense.
And I could see you being back again in 3 years, Chuck. You may want to go for the regular permit.
Yeah, but, there is other, you could also book a trip with, there are certain people that do mudlarking outings, and I'm not too sure whether they might sort the permit out for you.
Like a tour package, so to speak.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But
okay.
You just need to you need to contact the Port of London Authority. If you go on their website, if you just Google mudlarking Port of London Authority, and then contact them. But I think you actually have to book the day in advance, the specific day, and then so you'd need also to check the tides on that. So I mean, you know. You can through any of a link on my site. Drop me an email, and I'll send you some links that you can look at and give you a little bit more information. And I can send you some links of people that do trips.
Well,
very
that's
nice.
Interesting. Just fun to say it. I got to take a stroll along the Thames mud instead of the Mississippi mud.
Yeah, I think you have to. It's rich with history, and we don't have oxygen in our mud. It's anaerobic, so it keeps all those artifacts really nice and in great condition.
It does seem to treat them very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's sort of unique to the Thames mud, but we're always told that the Thames mud is anaerobic, so when something is dropped in there, it stays in a remarkably good condition until it comes out again.
Yeah, like a time capsule.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, that was my question. Good show, and I'll sit back and listen a little more. You've been very, very informational, and I'll check out your YouTube.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Alrighty.
All right.
Nice. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks for your call,
Bye-bye.
Chuck.
You bet.
Wow. Well, there you go. Sounds like you've got another subscriber there coming.
Oh, excellent.
Chuck does love history for sure, and he has been fortunate enough to be over there in England a few times. I still say he's probably better off getting the 3-year pass, because I see him going back whenever he gets a chance.
It does seem to make sense, really, to get the 3-year one. Well, it does, yeah. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, especially the difference in cost isn't that much of a difference, it seems like. And, a day compared to a 3-year permit, come on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's not even a day, really, because you only have a few hours while the tide is low.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you are kind of restricted to the timetable of the tides. So, yeah, it's a day pass, but you're only talking a few hours.
Yeah.
But it does seem, like you said, that the mud there does treat the artifacts that you find very, very well. So do you find yourself having to do much as far as cleaning and preserving the finds that you keep around the studio or anything, or do you not do anything to preserve them? You just kind of wash them off in water and you're done.
A lot of people ask me how I clean the pipes, and it's quite interesting with the clay pipes because they come out and they're quite black, and some people think that I might treat them with bleach and what have you, but I don't actually wash the pipes at all. They just fade on their own to a really nice sort of creamy colour. And I like to maintain a bit of age on them. I mean, I don't see the point of scrubbing them with bleach and making them look like brand new pipes, because that's going to take away that authentic historical look,
Right, like wiping the patina
like they're old.
off.
I don't want them to look like they're new. You can go and buy a replica pipe if you want to do that.
Good point.
Metal. Yeah, I mean, it's the metal that is more of a problem. Like my padlock that I found with this name on, you'd never imagine that there'd be a name underneath it. That took a little more work. But I still use quite sort of crude methods like vinegar, like soak the padlocks and the old rusty metal in vinegar or lemon juice sometimes, or even molasses, I think I was suggested.
Yeah, that'll do it too.
Yeah, so I put things in vinegar and then I scrub them with a wire brush. I mean, obviously, if it's a coin, I'm a lot more careful. In fact, I don't scratch my coins with anything. I mean, my Queen Elizabeth I silver half a crown, I've barely done anything to it because I just wouldn't want to spoil the. It was already faded enough as it is, so I don't include coins. I'm not very good at the electrolysis thing. I mean, I know a lot of people use that. It's not something that I'm particularly expert at, using the electrolysis to clean coins and things.
Okay.
So mostly I'm a vinegar, lemon juice kind of girl, really.
Okay. And then with go ahead.
No, just a little bit of Brasso, bit of fine sandpaper on occasions.
So with these, like with, say, for example, the lock, once you got the oxidation off of there, the rust and corrosion to where you could see the name, do you just stop there and leave it at that, or do you coat it with something to seal it off from the air so that it doesn't continue to rust away?
Do you know what, Josh? I haven't done that. I think I probably should. Cleaning, I probably should look into doing something like that. But thus far, I haven't. But it's something I need to probably learn a little more about. Is that process of preserving things? Because I have seen some people who have had very rusty padlocks, and then they've done something to them which makes them look absolutely amazing. And I probably haven't gone on to that stage yet with mine, so I must look into that.
Well, it kind of sounds like, much like with detecting, mudlarking is another aspect of our hobby too, where you literally can learn something new every day that you're immersed in it.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Absolutely right. And cleaning stuff is something which I could probably do with a little more, a little more tuition on, because you have to be so careful. You can completely ruin something if you try and clean it. I mean, obviously we've all had that thing with the coin. It's very tempting to try and polish up a coin to see what's underneath the stuff, and it's easy, isn't it, to just wipe off that lovely date.
and you can always go forward, but unfortunately you can't go backward if you look at it and go, oh, maybe that was a bit much, maybe I took it too far.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a trial and error process, basically, where we may lose a few items along the way, but usually it only takes one mistake to learn that lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
And recently, I want to say a few weeks back, you found your glass dome that you now feature an item at the end of every video. Did you ever find out what the glass dome was originally?
Well, I think it's come off of the light off of the ship.
Nice. Well, it works out great in the application that you're using it for now, which brings to mind a lot of the times in your videos, I'll see, like, obviously the bottles will set on a shelf or whatever, and you've got your glass dome on the table and all of that. Do you have another area of the studio maybe where you have some of your finds in display boxes or cases, or how do you like to display your items?
I do. I've got lots of display boxes, actually, and they're in another room because there simply isn't room for everything in my studio. I have most of my kind of sort of special finds I've got in big glass and wood cases and stacked up under beds in drawers. There's quite a lot of these, all waiting, to be put up on the wall. Or I used to have some finds stuck into like old printers' trays, but the thing is, I don't really like having things stuck down on the wall, because I think that all these finds, they're just, you want to be able to take them out and touch them and talk about them and hold them in your hand. It feels wrong for them to be stuck down somehow behind glass. I think they're meant to be held. I think it's an important part of getting in touch with them by holding these artifacts.
Yeah, especially like with your last video, you found quite a unique piece of thick glass or crystal or something with some markings on it. That would be a piece that I could definitely see people wanting to pick up and hold to look at and turn in their hand. Were you ever able to find out much more about it?
Yeah, actually, a lot of people have written down about that, and apparently it's probably something something to do with maybe a telescope or a periscope, or so. It's older than I thought. First of all, I thought it was an old, like one of these modern ornaments, but no, it's probably come from a periscope or something like that, something designed to yeah. I'm talking not terribly sure what it is. I'm trying to find the comments, but it's something that does have a lot of interesting what's the word, possibilities. Anyway, I'm going to have a look afterwards and see what. It's great because everybody gets together and does the research, and I can look at the comments and find out.
Right, that is one of the advantages that we do have with social media, for sure. There's a lot of very, very helpful people out there, and it gives us access to quite a wide variety of a knowledge base that way. It
does, and I think everybody enjoys a challenge, and I mean, and looking up things and learning something new. That's been my experience of it.
Right. And earlier we had touched on the clay pipes a little bit, and I'm sure that the websites that you mentioned in your video will reflect that as well. But a lot of the times, if I remember right, you can actually get a rough ballpark of what they date to just simply based on the size of the bowl, because originally tobacco was a bit expensive. So originally the bowls were smaller, but as the price came down, the bowls got larger on them, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right. There are a few ways to date a pipe, and one of them is that the earlier pipes from the late 16th century and early 17th century, the bowls were a lot smaller because tobacco was a lot more scarce and it was expensive. And then as it became more available and more widely used, the price dropped, so the bowls grew bigger. And then, later on, let's say late 18th, early 19th century, then you've got the nice decorated bowls, and the stems are a lot more slender. So you can also tell by the size of the hole in the stems, if it's a very large hole in the thick stems, those pipes tend to be older as well. And then also where the maker's marks are. Earlier pipes, the maker's marks are on the heel underneath the bowl, and then in the mid-19th century, they started putting them along the side. So there's a lot of little clues about this, and some very detailed diagrams that you can get your pipe and sort of have a look, and by the shape of the bowl, that's the key, really, the shape of the bowl.
Absolutely. And some very ornate ones that you find too, although you do find quite a lot of pipes. It was a popular thing.
I call it going out on pipe patrol when I go out looking for pipes. Yeah. I like to think I'm a pipe whisperer.
Right, yeah, you do seem to find plenty of the stems and quite a number of the bowls as well, and some of them are in remarkably good condition. You would think they would be crushed away to just bits and pieces, but
I know,
you find a number of them in great shape.
Yeah, it always amazes me that they last so long, but I suppose that mud is just a real protective cushion. And a lot of them just seem to survive. I guess they're just a lot more hardy and robust than we think. But it always amazes me. Some of the designs are so intricate and interesting. And my most interesting clay pipe is a lady sitting on a commode with her skirts hitched up, going to the toilet. And that was made by a French pipe maker, typical. Called Louis Fiolet in the 18th century. But yes, it's simply a woman sitting on the toilet. And so you think, well, who was walking around with that in his mouth?
Well, everybody's got different tastes, I guess. Definitely.
I don't know if that would go down very well today.
Right, yeah. Must have, some things are more socially acceptable or something like that, but some of them were quite very intricate and ornate. You really do never know, especially when they're coming out of the ground like that. I believe in your last video you mentioned you had found two that were very, very nice, but as far as age, you're talking hundreds of years apart.
That's right. Well, the two I found on my last video there, and it was the same stretch of foreshore. One of them dated back to about 1650, and then the other one was from about 1850. So, we're looking at 300 years. 1650, 17, 18. No,
right.
Hang on, I've got something wrong here. 200, 300 years anyway.
Right. But still, and to see them come out in as much of it that came out that they did, they were remarkably intact.
Yeah, I know. It's quite astounding, really, especially the fragility of the later pipe. It's quite interesting. Yeah, it just seems, like I said on the video, it would have been quite a thrill for the person who lost that later pipe to find the earlier one,
Absolutely. And I know it's always hard to kind of pick one favorite find, and you've mentioned a few of them already tonight. But what has been one of the oddest or strangest finds that you've found?
Strangest finds. Well, I found a couple of human jawbones. That's quite a strange find. Quite gruesome finds. And obviously these need to be reported to the police, just so that they didn't have any foul play ruled out. But the second jawbone I found, it was dated back to, it could have been from the 17th century. It could have been later, but it could have been the 17th or 18th century. And it was, so that was pretty strange, trying to imagine how that person ended up in the river. And what else? Gosh, there's so many strange finds. Well, I mean, I found recently a bit of bone which I didn't recognize, and that turned out to be a part of a turtle. And it came from
the rib bone, I believe.
So that certainly probably came from a Tudor, well, no, not a Tudor, but probably a Georgian kitchen. So that was up there on my strange list.
Talk about the paths that research can lead you down. That's a fine example right there, because those were definitely some very odd recipes that you were mentioning.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's fun, isn't it? You get into the research and then you start, oh my gosh, roast dormouse, really? You sort of start going off on a tangent and then you end up going down all sorts of rabbit holes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You kind of go to research one thing and kind of fall into the rabbit hole and look at all the information you find then. Man, it was tough times for some people back then if they were eating stuff like that. Of course, then again, some of it sounded like it may have been quite the delicacy of the time.
I know. I just not convinced myself. I just can't quite get myself enthusiastic about that. Yeah.
I think I've got to side with you on that. If that was their thing, that's great. But I guess that makes me appreciate the modern day a little more sometimes, at least in terms of the cuisine.
Yeah. But also, I found I found a spell that was wrapped up in a little ribbon. Again, that was, I found a few odd things, with pins in, which I haven't kept. I've left them well alone, sent them on their way down the river. I found a white witch spell wrapped up with a ribbon, and it was more or less a spell asking trying to cast a spell. This woman obviously wanted a man to leave his wife to be with her, and it was a spell, to this effect, that she'd thrown in the river with a little ribbon and a flower. So I opened it up just to see what it was and read this, and folded it back up and put it back.
Yeah, that's probably one of those where you look and go, oh, well, that was interesting. Moving on.
Yeah. You just never know what's going to be washed up. I mean, yeah, you just really don't know at all. It's such a mixture of finds. It really is.
Right. And every outing is another adventure. And hey, it's great just even on the days where you may not find much, which I don't really see how that can be in that area. But at least you're still out enjoying the outdoors and seeing the sights and things of that nature, too, because I notice you do work a lot of nature clips into your videos as well.
Yeah, I do. It's a really big part of it. I love the nature and the birds and the seals. We get seals in the River Thames now. A seal jumped out of the river and played with my dog a few years ago, and we get fish and the birds. Yeah, I love nature, so it's a really big part of it for me.
Right. And for those who may be curious in knowing, what sort of camera or editing software do you use for your videos?
Okay, I use for my videos, for my camera, I have a Sony Handycam. Just a very simple handheld camera. I used to use my phone, but it just didn't work out. So yeah, I use a Sony Handycam, and they're great because they're small enough so that I can keep it in a little pouch that I wear when I'm walking along. And then for ages I used Windows Movie Maker. I'm not very techie at all, but then that started to crash all the time. So now I use Movavi on a Mac, but again, it's still pretty basic stuff, but it works for me. It works very well for me.
Well, yeah, that's clearly, 38,000 subscribers, and I don't know, I can't remember how quick I caught the video that you uploaded today after you had uploaded it, but even at the point that I caught it, there were already I don't know, roughly 3,000 or 4,000 views on it. So clearly it's working for you. People like what they're seeing.
Yeah, it's really lovely because I didn't ever plan on having a YouTube channel. It just sort of happened, really.
How did that come about?
I just remember it was a couple of years ago, I was just down on the Thames foreshore and I just took a little film on my mobile phone of what I'd found. And it just went on from there. And then gradually I realized that people quite enjoyed them. So I started to get a little bit more adventurous and it's just gone on from there. And then I was contacted by a few people who wanted to do collaborations. And I think, as you probably know, on YouTube, that's the good thing about it is
right.
When you start to collaborate with people and you start to support other channels and everybody kind of supports each other, and then your channel grows, and then it becomes quite a challenge, doesn't it? And it's quite motivating to try and grow your channel.
Right. So, and even recently evolved a bit, I guess you could say, with featuring or beginning to feature, I guess we should say, local artists in the set.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I just thought, for me, having a platform like that, I kind of want to be able to help other people to share their work as well. That's one of my aims. And so that's something that I really want to be able to do. So if I can do that every 6 weeks or so, mind you, it's a lot of work, as you know, isn't it, making a video. Yes. And so, I was thinking to myself, crikey, I better start putting that together now. And I'm not even sure who I'm going to have on next time yet.
Going, man, what kind of an idea was this? As if I didn't have enough on my plate.
I know, exactly. I'm just full of these great ideas.
Well, sometimes, like you had said earlier, sometimes things are meant to be found. Well, sometimes there's a reason why we get these ideas to do these things. So hopefully it turns out to be a very successful venture for you.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. Yeah.
Well, I guess we have actually kept you on for quite some time. Hopefully the chocolate's not wearing off. But before we go, maybe you would like to have an opportunity to let people know from yourself where they can find you, all of your social media, things of that nature, and any parting words of wisdom to a new-coming mudlarker that maybe would make some of the hurdles that you had to deal with a little easier, had you known.
Okay. I think, so thank you very much, everybody, for listening already. I mean, mudlarking is one of my great passions. I would highly recommend that if you do come to England, or if you do come to London, that you try and take a trip out along the Thames. And it's one of those things where I think you have to leave, well, a bit like metal detecting, it's all about leaving your expectations behind and just finding the magic, even in a little piece of pottery and a little piece of clay pipe stem, and just being open to that possibility of just finding something really, really special. And yes, Port of London Authority, that's where you need to find the information. You are welcome to drop me an email. I can always send you information about what to do and send you a few links. And if you would like to subscribe, or well, if you'd like to actually visit my channel first, you might not want to subscribe to it. It's Nicola White, Nicola White Mudlark. And I have my website, which is tidelineart.com, and most of my other links are on there. I'm on Twitter. I use Twitter a lot, and it's at Tideline Art, and Instagram, Tideline Art, and my Etsy site, which actually is a little bit empty at the moment, but I make things out of objects that I pick up along the River Thames as well. So my whole life is very Thames orientated. But I will say it's the best fun you can have in wellies. So do get your wellies and come on down to the Thames and see what you can find. And enjoy.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was very, very well put. And you have been just an absolute pleasure to speak with. I'm very, very glad that you opted for the live run rather than the pre-recorded run. Even though the difference in the time zone and everything, much appreciated. And the way it sounds, the callers and the listeners also appreciated it as well.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm wired on chocolate now. I'm not going to be able to go to sleep.
Well, hang in there.
It's 2:30 in the morning.
Right. Yeah. Gonna be some late night cleaning of finds, or maybe you'll get hit with that epiphany of who the next featured artist will be.
Yeah, maybe. And I've got to get, well, I've got a low tide tomorrow at around about 9:30, so I'm going to be looking forward to getting down there for that.
Ah, there you go. There you go. Well, you have been an absolute pleasure, and I would like to thank you once again for taking the time. Hang in there with me for a couple of minutes, and we'll get out of here. So that was a very, very interesting and informative show with Nicola White, Mudlark Tideline Art on YouTube. As she said, go and check out her channel. Maybe you don't want to subscribe. I can't see how, though, because she does a very, very good job with her videos and all of her other social media links that are in the description tonight, as well as all of the links that we normally carry in our description. You can check us out here on Spreaker, all the wonderful podcast distribution services, the YouTube channel where we house some of the archives of the show as well, and many of the wonderful Facebook groups out there as well, like Metal Detecting Beyond Sight and Sound, Relics Radio, Ohio Relic Hunter, Dirt Pirates Detecting. The list just goes on and on and on. You can join us on all of them, one of them, or none of them. The choice is entirely up to you, but we're certainly glad to see that you joined us here tonight for this special show where Nicola took the time to sit down with us live. Very much appreciated. Go ahead and smash the like button on your way out, and we'll roll the music. Have a wonderful evening, folks.